I never imagined that a single notification could change everything between me and my siblings. When I woke up that Saturday morning in early June, I planned to enjoy a quiet breakfast with the sun filtering through my apartment windows. I brewed a cup of dark roast coffee and checked my phone for messages about the weekend retreat I had organized. My heart swelled with pride at the smooth logistics, the peaceful cabin in upstate New York, the yoga sessions, the personalized meal plans. This retreat was my gift to them all for my 25th birthday, and I could not wait to see their reactions. The group chat buzzed with excitement as they discussed travel details, car sharing, and arrival times. I smiled, imagining us laughing together by the lake under the pines. I tapped the chat icon and scrolled through the thread. My sister Harper was teasing me about my early morning energy. My brother Jonah was arguing with our cousin about whether to bring trail mix or granola bars. I typed a playful reply and hit send. It felt like everything was in place. Later that day, I sent out the final invoice for the cabin deposit, covering every cost so none of them would owe a cent. I loved surprising people, especially my family. I remembered the day they all chipped in for my college graduation gift. This was my turn to pay it forward. A few hours later, as I packed my bags with yoga pants, hiking boots, and a stack of mystery novels, my phone buzzed again. I opened the chat app and froze. The group chat was gone. Instead, the screen displayed a message that there were no active chats or groups. My pulse quickened. I tapped refresh, restarted the app, but nothing changed. It was as if someone had wiped away our conversation entirely. My heart sank when I realized it had to be intentional. I immediately called Harper, but she sent me straight to voicemail. I texted Jonah. He replied tersely that I should not contact him. Confusion and hurt collided in my chest. I spent the afternoon in a daze. I rearranged my suitcase, unable to decide whether to go on this retreat alone. I paced my living room, glancing at the travel plans pinned on the corkboard above my desk. Each sticky note represented an activity I had meticulously organized with love. I wondered if my siblings had seen it differently. Had inviting them felt patronizing? Had my gesture come across as showing off? I replayed every text, every emoji, desperately searching for where I went wrong. But nothing explained why they had removed me from the group chat and why they refused to answer my calls. By early evening, I resolved to drive up to the retreat alone. I needed answers. I tossed the last pair of socks into my duffel bag, grabbed my car keys, and climbed behind the wheel. The drive upstate was familiar territory. I used to visit these woods with my siblings on summer weekends during childhood. We built blanket forts in the living room, roasted marshmallows over a fire, and told ghost stories under the stars. Those memories stoked a fire in me, an ember of hope that maybe once I arrived, we could reclaim that closeness and understand what had happened. The country road wound through rolling hills blanketed in emerald green. A soft breeze rustled the leaves of towering oak trees. I turned on the radio and a song we used to sing together came on. My voice unconsciously hummed along, and for a moment nostalgia filled my chest, easing the ache of betrayal. I glanced at the gas gauge, noticed it was half full, but I didn't mind stopping if that's what it took to reach the cabin and find my siblings. By sunset, I arrived at the familiar sign marking the entrance to Cedar Pines Retreat. I parked in front of the reception lodge and took out my wallet to pay for incidentals. That's when it hit me. I had already paid the full amount. My mind raced as I retrieved the email confirmation on my phone. It showed my name, my credit card, the exact total for the entire week. I stood there stunned. Why would they kick me out when I was the one who had paid? The receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes, walked out and greeted me warmly. She said they had been expecting me to check in for the full retreat. She tapped my reservation and handed me a key card. Key card in hand, I stepped outside to get a better look at the cluster of cabins by the lake. The sky was a watercolor of lavender and rose, and the air smelled like pine needles and earth. Despite the tension in my chest, I felt a glimmer of relief. Here was proof that the retreat was mine, that my effort and my generosity had not been for nothing. I wanted to call my siblings, to tell them I was here, but fear held me back. What if they ignored me again? What if this retreat felt ruined now because of their rejection? I slowly walked down the gravel path toward the largest cabin, the one I reserved for family gatherings. Every step felt heavy, carrying the weight of unanswered questions and the hope for reconciliation. I unlocked the door and flicked on the lights. The space was bright and airy, with wooden beams overhead and windows overlooking the lake. A picnic table sat in the center, ready for evening snacks. On the kitchen counter, a plate of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies waited for us. I picked one up and took a bite. Tomorrow, I promised myself, I would find them and demand answers. Tonight I would sit by the window, watch the moon rise over the water, and hope that love could bridge the distance my siblings had put between us. When dawn broke, I pressed my forehead against the cool window pane, watching the early light shimmer across the lake. The gentle lap of water lulled me into a restless half-sleep, and I felt the ache of absence as deeply as I felt the weight of the keycard in my palm. Questions stumbled through my mind alongside memories of childhood laughter, the scent of campfires, and the way Harper's hair glowed silver under the stars. I clutched my blanket tighter as dawn approached, uncertain of what I would face when daylight arrived. When morning light filtered through the curtains, I rose stiffly from the bed, my muscles still sore from yesterday's long drive. The cabin felt empty without my siblings' voices, the silence echoing around me like a challenge. I unrolled my yoga mat and moved through a sequence of sun salutations, each stretch feeling like a prayer, each exhale releasing tension tangled in my shoulders and chest. I whispered their names with each breath, hoping the air would carry my longing toward them. After yoga, I padded into the small kitchen and poured a mug of herbal tea, inhaling the aroma of chamomile and mint. I bit into a slightly stale chocolate chip cookie from the plate left on the counter, the sweetness reminding me of simpler days. I set my tea and cookie on the picnic table outside the cabin, taking a seat beneath a maple tree with branches that reached toward the sky like comforting arms. I opened my phone and stared at the blank lock screen. I decided to search the property for any sign of them, starting with the trails that wound through the woods. The morning air was crisp, and dew clung to blades of grass like tiny diamonds. I followed the path toward the lake, the undergrowth crunching softly beneath my hiking boots. Every rustle of leaves made me pause, expecting someone to step into view, to call my name. Instead, I found only fox tracks and the occasional chirp of a morning bird, as if the forest itself held its breath. At the water's edge, I spotted a small wooden dock, its planks weathered and gray. I sat on the edge, legs dangling above the cool water, and let my reflection ripple beneath me. I remembered the first summer we came here as kids and built a raft using logs and rope. Jonah had been terrified it would sink, while Harper cheered him on until he finally climbed aboard. The memory made me smile and ache simultaneously. I closed my eyes, feeling the tug of nostalgia and longing. Returning toward the main lodge, I ran into Marisol, one of the retreat coordinators, who greeted me with a warm smile. She asked if I needed anything, her eyes filled with genuine concern. I forced a smile and explained that I was trying to find my siblings. She furrowed her brow and told me she hadn't seen them since they arrived yesterday afternoon. She suggested checking the group activity schedule. They might be on a guided hike or in the meditation cabin. Hope flickered in my chest. I thanked her and hurried inside the lodge, scanning the bulletin board under the glass case. The schedule listed a sunrise meditation session followed by a forest therapy walk, but my siblings' names weren't marked by any check marks or attendance slips. The next event was a silent breakfast at 9, then a creative writing workshop in the meadow. I noted the time and rushed out with my phone in hand. I decided to circle back to the cabins, hoping to spot them packing or preparing to leave. The row of cabins was quiet. Doors stood closed, curtains drawn. I approached cabin 3 where I had reserved space for my siblings and me. I knocked lightly, hearing the echo of sound yet no footsteps stirring inside. I peeked through a gap in the curtains and saw a neatly made twin bed and an empty desk. On the nightstand, one of Jonah's sneakers lay abandoned. A pang of guilt sliced through me. Had I pushed them too much? Forced them into a retreat they didn't want? I sank onto the bed and leaned my head against the wall, letting tears roll freely as I wondered where they might have gone. Every scenario played out. In my mind, maybe they left early in anger, or maybe they were hiding, hurt by my well-intentioned surprise. I considered driving back to the city and calling it quits. But then I thought of all the work I put into this. The hours I spent researching, booking, planning. I promised myself I would not give up without one final attempt. Grabbing my light jacket and map of the grounds, I set out toward the meditation cabin perched on a gentle rise overlooking the valley. The trail was carpeted with pine needles, and the scent of damp earth rose as I walked. I found the cabin door slightly ajar and peered inside. There, seated on the mat in silent contemplation, were my siblings facing away from me. Their shoulders were tense, the space between them and me palpable. My heart pounded as I took a step closer. "Harper, Jonah," I whispered, voice trembling. They didn't react at first, so I repeated their names, waiting until they turned. Harper's eyes were red-rimmed, and Jonah's jaw was clenched. Our gazes collided, a silent history flashing between us, childhood grievances, unspoken rivalries, the bond that held us together and the fractures that threatened to break us apart. My chest tightened as I searched their faces for a sign of forgiveness or anger. I took a deep breath and spoke from my heart. I told them how much I loved them, explained that my payment for the retreat was my way of giving back for everything they had done for me. I apologized if my gift had felt like an obligation rather than an offering. The wind rustled through the eaves, as if the forest itself was listening. Harper's lip quivered and Jonah's eyes softened. I stepped forward, hoping this moment could become the bridge we all needed. I took a hesitant step closer and held out my hand, voice steady despite the quiver in my chest. I didn't want this retreat to feel like an obligation or a reminder of debts. I wanted to give you space to breathe, to celebrate life together. Jonah's shoulders sagged, and Harper's eyes glistened with tears. I watched as they exchanged a glance charged with memories and unspoken love, and for a moment time stood still. Harper was the first to speak. Her voice was soft but laced with hurt. We felt blindsided. "You didn't ask if we really wanted a weekend in the woods. It felt like you decided for us." I nodded, heart pounding. She was right. In my eagerness to surprise them, I had overlooked the importance of asking. I swallowed hard and admitted, "I thought you'd love it because I needed it a chance to reconnect. I didn't realize I was making decisions for you." My words trembled as they left my lips, raw and honest. Jonah shifted his weight, running a hand through his hair. "We've all been so busy. When we got that group notification, it meant something. Then you disappeared." We felt cut out. His admission stung with truth. I swallowed past a lump in my throat and replied, "I never meant to disappear. I was excited, proud. I thought covering the costs would make things easier. I see now it made you feel powerless instead." I watched their expressions soften as they absorbed my apology. Harper stood and took my hand, her touch warm and familiar. She led me to the edge of the cabin's porch where the forest opened into a sunlit clearing. Morning dew still clung to the grass, and the scent of pine and earth wrapped around us like a hug. I closed my eyes and inhaled deeply, letting the crisp air wash over me as I prepared to listen. Jonah followed, and we formed a small circle on the wooden planks. The valley stretched out below, a carpet of green fading into mist-shrouded hills. I turned my gaze between them, seeing the eagerness in Harper's brown eyes and the guarded vulnerability in Jonah's dark gaze. I asked them what they needed from me now. Harper's answer came first. "I need you to ask us if we want something. Before you decide it for us. I want to feel like I have agency." I nodded, promising to do better. Jonah's request was quieter. "I need honesty. If you're angry or hurt, tell us. Don't plan a surprise to smooth it over." His words hit me with bittersweet clarity. I realized that my impulse to surprise had sometimes served as a shield against difficult conversations. I swallowed the last of my pride and agreed, promising to practice honesty. The three of us sat in silence for a moment, bathed in soft sunlight, the forest alive around us. We shared a few more confessions. Harper admitted she'd been jealous of my independence since I moved to the city. Jonah confessed he felt overshadowed by both of us because he stayed closer to home. I listened as they bared their insecurities, each revelation weaving us closer together. When my turn came, I spoke of my fears of being left behind, of not mattering if I didn't go above and beyond. They both reached for my hands and squeezed them, affirming that none of us would let that happen again. After that conversation, a sense of relief and warmth settled among us. We decided to spend the morning together in a way that honored each of our needs. Harper suggested breakfast at the outdoor picnic tables. Jonah proposed a gentle paddle on the lake. I agreed enthusiastically, and we walked back down the trail toward the cabins, the tension of the previous days melting with every step. When we reached a clearing by the lodge, the breakfast spread was laid out under a canopy of birch trees, fresh fruit, scrambled eggs, yogurt parfaits, and steaming coffee. Retreat guests drifted in quietly, giving us a respectful distance. We sat side by side on the weathered bench, sharing bites and laughter. I watched as Harper's mouth curved in two, a genuine smile, and Jonah's usual stoicism gave way to relaxed contentment. In that moment, I realized that what I'd planned mattered less than simply being present with them. After breakfast, we headed to the boathouse, where the kayaks and paddleboards waited. Harper slid into a bright yellow kayak, her balance steady. Jonah picked up a paddle for a tandem canoe, glancing at me with a mischievous grin. I joined him, sinking onto the wooden bench beside his shoulder. We pushed off the shore and glided across the mirrored surface of the lake. The only sounds are paddles dipping and the soft call of a distant loon. As we floated, the earlier conversation replayed behind my closed eyes: Harper's heartfelt apology, Jonah's earnest requests, my promises to change. I opened my eyes and watched their reflections dance across the water. The sun broke through a patchwork of clouds, illuminating the hills beyond. The world felt expansive and brimming with possibility, just as our family bond felt renewed. Once we returned the boats, we decided to join the creative writing workshop in the meadow. Blankets were spread under the shade of an oak tree, and participants scribbled in journals. I pulled out my own notebook, and Harper leaned over to ask, "What are you writing?" I smiled and said, "A letter of thank you to both of you." Jonah chuckled and replied, "You always have to write something." I laughed, realizing how true that was, and began to write, "Dear Harper and Jonah, thank you for reminding me that the greatest gift is being seen and heard." The workshop facilitator encouraged us to share excerpts, so I read my letter aloud. My voice wavered as I described our journey from misunderstanding to reconciliation. When I finished, Harper and Jonah both nodded, eyes bright, and I felt a swell of emotion. The other participants offered gentle applause, and I knew that our story of family, forgiveness, and growth had resonated beyond our circle. That evening, we returned to our family cabin to pack our things. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows through the trees. As we zipped up our suitcases, Harper wrapped an arm around my shoulders and pressed her forehead against mine. Jonah placed a hand on my back, drawing me into a group hug. The tension that had filled the cabin just 2 days ago was gone, replaced by warmth and understanding. On the drive home the next morning, I sat between them in the back seat as Harper and Jonah exchanged playlists and stories about plans for the upcoming summer. I leaned my head against the window and watched the familiar roads unfurl. My heart felt lighter than it had in months. I realized that while grand gestures have their place, it's in the small moments, honest conversations, shared laughter, gentle touches where true connection lives. As the city skyline appeared on the horizon, I squeezed my siblings' hands and whispered, "Thank you for coming back to me." Harper smiled and Jonah gave my hand a final, reassuring squeeze. I knew our bond had been tested and had emerged stronger. And as we pulled into my driveway, I felt certain that whatever the future held, we would face it together, hand in hand, with open hearts and honest words guiding our way.